Hello everyone, my name is Raven and welcome to Raven67854 Gaming and welcome to my Blender 3D tutorial series. In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at how to make terrain meshes. This is great for a whole lot of different things, from gaming to whatever if you're building a scene or whatever. But the main thing we're going to be looking at is building the terrain and then painting it, which is what you can see what I've done already. If you check the description, the three textures and the link to where you download them is located in the description. I'm only going to be using these three. You could probably find way better ones, or you can make your own. But these are completely royalty free as far as I know, if I remember correctly. And we'll also at the very end set it up real quick to do like a quick render just like this. May take a little bit longer given the fact that I'm recording the screen and using up a fair bit of my processor just doing that. But as you can see, it looks okay. It doesn't look too bad. And it's doing the full sample AA right there. So let's get started, shall we? So the first thing we need to do is, obviously, if you haven't done so already, is open up Blender. And you should see something very much like this. Go on and hit X and delete the cube. Don't need the cube. And then right click on the lamp right here, and then go over here to the lamp source and set it to sun. And I'm just going to go ahead and set this up for the render later. I like to do 4 samples for the shadowing. It makes it look a quote unquote a little bit better, but doesn't really do too much. And that's it. Actually, no. Go to the world and set the horizon color to pure black. Turn on ambient occlusion, set it to 10 samples, and now we're done. You can also go to the render tab and set it to 16, and then set it to full sample if you like. However, you don't have to do any of that if you're not planning on rendering it out or anything. Just real quick setup there. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to do is I'm going to hit Shift A, Mesh, then Plane, and I'm going to make this let's make it 40 units. That's pretty big. Yeah, let's do 40 units. So when you're doing this, like particularly if you're doing it for a game, you will have to kind of match the vertices on the next mesh together. Or one thing you could do is you could build a really massive terrain. Like you could sculpt it out like completely from scratch if you wanted to. And then you could break it up into chunks. And I might actually cover this in another tutorial, but we're not going to do it in this one. We're going to do very simple in this one. However, matching it up will be entirely up to you. It's pretty simple. It's just time consuming. So the next thing is hit tab to enter with the plane selected. Hit tab to enter edit mode, and then hit W. And we want to do just a normal subdivide. Now, as we do the subdivision, you'll notice up here we have vertices, edges, and faces. The fourth one is the number of triangles, and that is how graphics cards render to the screen. They render 3D, anything 3D or even technically 2D. They render it in triangles. So I'm gonna do this all the way up to 8,192. Now, before I get started, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but I want to cover it somewhat before we get started. When you're sculpting out your terrain, any areas that are flat, ideally for optimization purposes, and this means less and less these days because if you're just pushing polygons, even cheap Intels can push an enormous amount of polygons. But for the sake of good practice, any area where you have a completely flat surface, remove all the vertices, and then just create one big face. Save yourself a little bit of processing power. And if you're making like a 3D game for mobile, that would actually be really important because mobiles are pretty cruddy. So now down here where you see edit mode, we want to select sculpt mode. And I'm going to drag this out just a little bit. And we want to select symmetry lock. And we want to uncheck the X so we can actually, paint normally as if we were using a terrain editor or anything else. And I'm going to get rid of all of that. And I'm going to go back to object mode. And I'm going to set shading to smooth. And then I'm going to go back to sculpt mode. There we go. Okay, that's much better. Okay, so I'm going to set the strength to 1, and I'm going to make kind of a similar scene like before. I'm just going to have a path that just kind of snakes through, so I'm just going to kind of decide how I want my path to be. You know what, that seems good. And now I'm just going to, actually I'm going to increase the radius just a little bit. Okay, that's a little too big. Let's try 50. Yeah, 50 is good. Okay. And I'm just going to go through here and do it like so, and you could add multiple paths if you like. You know, just make whatever you want. Um, with the sculpting tools, you have a whole bunch of different options. The only ones we're going to use is Sculpt Draw and Sculpt Smooth, but you can use all of them. You can also go into edit mode and manually edit and tweak vertices, which may be helpful, like if you're trying to make a ramp, for example. Okay. That seems pretty nice. So, now that we have, it's pretty well raised up, actually. Raise this one up just a little bit as well. Okay. Now we're going to select smooth, and I'm going to set the strength to 0.2, and I'm actually going to weigh up the radius on this sucker. Hit 7 and then 5 on the numpad, and I'm just trying to smoothen it out really nice so it kind of, yeah, see how it kind of blends in a little fair bit? I'm going to lower that a lot, lower the radius a little bit there so I can kind of manually do it here. Hit tab here. Yeah. Hitting tab going back into edit mode, you can kind of see how it's really smooth. However, if you'd like, you could make a completely flat vertical cliff if you'd like, but I don't particularly want that. Okay, so now that we've done this, this is our terrain. Now let's hit tab again, and as you can see, like there are a couple areas where we could shrink the polygon count here, and I'm going to just do it right here. I'm not going to do it for the whole mesh. There's probably quite a few areas where we could do it. Whoops. And in case you're wondering, I know I might be going a little too fast, how I got that little circle and was able to select all the vertices. Just hit C. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just hit good old C. Okay. So let me look at this. Is that? Nope, see? That's slightly elevated. You know what? Since I'm just showing good practice, I'm just gonna. Okay, so with these selected here, it's completely flat. I'm just gonna X. I'm just gonna delete the vertices, and for some reason I had that selected. There we go. And then I'm just gonna grab these here, and then hit F. And that was actually slightly raised. Okay. No. I'm just gonna clear that out. Remove those vertices, and then, whoops. Actually, I want to remove the faces. There we go. There we go. Completely perfect. And as you can see, the triangle count dropped to 8,050. And ideally what you would do is you would go through any area that's flat or anywhere where you can, and you would just, you know, optimize it as best as you can. You'd gradually lower it. I'm also going to select remove doubles because that'll just remove a few vertices, or may remove a few vertices. No, I won't remove any because yeah, of course not. Okay, so with that done, now we're just going to hit U in edit mode, and we're going to select Smart UV Project. Normally, you'd want to unwrap it more properly, but for what we're doing, I find that this works just fine. And still inside of edit mode, and you want to drag the little thing right down here to make the other windows. Sorry. I know this is not a complete beginner tutorial, but I should probably explain some things. Let's merge all these back. So now we just want to create a brand new texture. So inside of the other window over here, you may want to select UV Image Editor, and then you want to hit New, and then Diffuse is what I'm going to call it. And I'm going to make it a 4096 by 4096. And I'm just going to hit OK. And then I'm going to join that area back. And actually, I'm going to double check that. I'm going to go into edit mode here. Double check. Yep. All right. So when you're in edit mode, the diffuse needs to be selected here so that Blender knows what it needs to paint to. And it'll warn you if you don't, because it'll tell you it doesn't have anything to paint to. And then I'm going to make a new material. I'm going to call it terrain, and I don't want it to have any specularity, and I want the intensity to be 1. Okay? And then I'm going to go over here to the texture tab, and I'm going to make a new texture, and I'm going to call this diffuse. So this is what we're going to, like when you're rendering, this is what you want displayed. Okay? So now what we want to do is we want to create 3 new textures, and I'm going to call this one grass, and I have it saved on my desktop. And I want to uncheck that, or you can leave it checked. It really doesn't matter. But if you're trying to render out, it's going to render over top, and it's not going to look good. For example, go into texture. Okay, that. Oh, well, it is displaying diffuse. Ah, I know why. Because it's on. I'm going to hit in, and then it's on multi-texture. There we go. Now it's on GLSL, and as you can see, that looks completely awful. And I'm going to call this dirt, although this texture is not exactly dirt. It's more like a rocky, dried mud, but that's fine. And create one more called rock, and just want to open up and make that. Now the rock looks pretty good. I actually quite like the rock. Okay, so I'm just going to uncheck all these 3. You can leave them checked or not. It really doesn't matter. And now what we want to do is go into texture paint. And the first thing we want to do inside of texture paint is open up symmetry. No, sorry, not symmetry, curve. This is kind of like the fall off. I find the default is perfectly fine for what we're doing, but you can adjust this depending on how you want the fall off to work. I'm going to leave it at default. The next thing is I'm going to set strength to 1, and I want to make sure that the color is set completely to white because I want it to draw exactly how it is. Now, this is something that's really nice about this particular terrain mesh because we're just painting to a texture. You know, you could add some different shading to it depending on what you're doing. So you can do some pretty neat stuff. Now we just want to select our texture, and I'm going to select the grass texture. And I want to hit Control Z because I forgot something. And brush mapping, set it to 3D because otherwise if you zoom in and out, you're going to get a different scale. And I'm going to set it to 4. So now what I'm going to do, because remember the whole thing is black, and it may be a little laggy for you. It may not be. I have no idea why that's not painting. Oh, I know why that's not painting. Because I need to set it to solid. There we go. All right. So yeah, set it to solid if you get those black spots. I forgot I left it on that. But like I said, it might be a little laggy. You can lower the radius, but it can be pretty laggy editing these textures. And you can set the texture, by the way, I said it's a 4096, but you can set it to any size. But depending on what engine you're using, that may or may not be a problem. Okay, so now as you can see, scroll around a bit. It looks pretty good. I mean, the scaling's probably not perfect, but it's fairly good. I'm gonna go into object mode here, and I'm gonna hit the delete key to center. I'm gonna set it back to texture, and then I'm gonna hit view, navigation, and then the walk navigation, and then there we go. It's kind of more like a fly, really, but so that way I can get down, you know, kind of down a little bit. Yeah, that's not too bad. I mean, probably a little bit higher. Let's do that. Let's set it to 5. And let's just go over top of it real quick. And I'm gonna set the viewport shading back to solid so I can actually make sure I'm painting everything properly. And of course, you know, you can mix and match. So some areas you can have it be, you know, really really big or really small or really fine detailed, pretty much whatever you want. I mean, you're just painting to a texture. So very simple. It's a little laggy, but that's fine. One reason why I set the strength to 1, it'll have a little less fall off, but actually it's a lot less fall off, but I just want to paint the whole thing. Okay, so now what we want to do is I want to get the dirt in there. So let's paint our dirt path really quick. I'm going to adjust this down to 40 because I think that's just a little too big for what we're doing. And I just want to, it's okay, like if, you know, like I said, you know, if you go over or in something, it's perfectly fine. Because, you know, we can make all the adjustments we want later. It's no big deal. And yep, see? It gets a little bit easier. Honestly, this might be where, actually, you know what? Let's do something really quick. Let's go back into object mode and let's hit Shift A and lamp. And let's add a hemi light and set it to texture. And that hemi light is way too bright. Let's set it to 0.1. There we go. Now we have a little bit better shading. So let's reselect our terrain and go back into texture. There we go. So now we have a little bit more shading, so we can kind of see our depth a little bit better. Still, obviously, of course, you need our texture in there to really break it up. Okay, so now let's do the sides really quick. So let's select our rock, and I'm actually going to set this to 50 because I actually want this kind of thick up on there. And I just want it to kind of blend in a little bit. And we're just going to go all the way up and around. Looks pretty good. You could go, all the way up this way if you really felt like it, but I'm not going to. And let's see here. Okay, and that looks really good, actually. So yeah, I mean, just do a little touch up. Let's go back into the dirt here. There's a little spot we missed right there, and we can go in on this just a little bit. Let's go back to the rock. There we go. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to actually set the strength of this to 1. And now I can, 1's not good enough. Hang on. I want to delete that. 0.3. There we go. No. 0.5. I'm trying to, there we go. So one thing we can do is we can mix this in a little bit. We can also adjust it to add. That really doesn't work. Pretty much mix is the only one that's really going to work for painting and texture. We just have to find the right strength. There we go. So, and also I want to actually do this with dirt. So one thing we can do is, let's lower that just a little bit. We can brush up just a little. Oh, it's still too strong. Oops. There we go. So we can go up in here and just mix in just a little bit of dirt up here. Probably too much strength, but that's okay. Like I said, you can always set the grass back to 1 and just goes right over top of it, or do a Control-Z. And now we're going to select the grass, and we're just going to lower this. And that's way too strong still. Still way too strong. And we're just going to kind of lighten it up just a little bit. Put a little, nah, actually, you know what? I want that to be completely, actually, yeah, I'm going to go over top of this just a little bit here. That's kind of, nope, still too much. I don't really like that. Let's see. Oh, there we go. That's not strong enough to really make much of a difference. There we go. There we go. I lightened it up just a little bit there. Okay. And that is that. So what you would want to do now is go back into object mode, and then down here where we can change the editor type, go into UV image editor, and you would just select image, save as image, desktop, and I would just, you can call it whatever you like, and then you just hit save image, and then you give Blender a moment, and then we'll go back to the 3D view, and if you were to go to the desktop right now, you would have your image out there, or wherever you happen to save it. Now, as far as saving out the actual terrain itself, that's fairly straightforward. File, export, and then just pick any of them that you want. I plan to have another tutorial series covering, importing into various engines, and we'll eventually do that. So right before we finish this up, because this video is actually getting kind of long, I'm gonna hit numpad. I'm gonna hit the numpad period to center again, and I'm gonna zoom out just a fair bit here. I'm gonna hit Control-Alt-0, and our camera's selected. So in the camera view, probably want to set this to like 350. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. And then I'm gonna hit 7 on the numpad, and I'm just, whoops, I'm just trying to drag it out, just a bit. This is a fairly large This is actually a fairly large terrain piece, in fairness to it. Okay, and there we go. We got our little thing all set up, and then we just hit F12, and that. We need to zoom in a fair bit on that. That's a little bit too much overbright right there. Probably need to adjust pretty much the ambient occlusion and everything else. But there you go. You have your nice little dirty top part. You know, you have a nice little shadow here. And you can render it out at any size you like. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. It's much better than the old one. And I will see you all in the next one. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them below. You can also get this blend file. I will pack everything into this blend file, all the textures and everything, so you can open it up and you can play around with it. As well, don't forget you can check the description for the actual textures. And I will see you all in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support this channel, you can do so through Patreon, or if you're on vid.me, you can subscribe there. And I'll see you all in the next one.